Hi, hello everyone. So first of all, thanks so much GTC Doha for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to help the community, and even with myself in Down Under, aka Australia, Sydney, Australia, it's a huge, massive pleasure to help you folks. So how are you guys doing? I hope you guys doing right. And today I'll be talking about user time API because performance really matters. For first things first, my name is Wilson Mendes. Let me introduce myself quite quick. Google developer expert in web technologies, Microsoft MVP and developer technologies. And though this is my handle, my Twitter handle, you can find me on Twitter or any social network that you like. So that's me. This is crazy dude. It's myself. Nothing to add. This is a fake gun. And during my free time, lend my brains in a company called Atlassian. You probably heard of some of our toolings such as Jira, Confluence, Trello, Bitbucket, and so on and so forth. So we play hard, we work hard, and we play even harder before pandemic, of course. So for now, use your mask, take your precautions, and that's me. Also, another initiative that I'm doing. I started a YouTube channel with some videos sharing some tips and tricks for web development, front-end, back-end, API, database, Docker, and anything that's related and relevant for us. That's called Code Quick Tips. So I'm sharing those videos every week. So if you want to take a look and subscribe, just go to this link. And so let's start the party, right? So now we'll be talking about performance. And the first question when we talk about performance is, how long is 2 seconds? You can change this 2 seconds for 5 seconds, for example, if you like. But the main idea here is how long is that time for your application? Is that too much? Is that too little? Up to you. But let me give you some numbers to help in those decisions. First things first, 1 second delay in mobile can decrease 20% of your revenue. If you have an e-commerce, for example, if you work at Amazon or any other e-commerce, like massive e-commerce that we have in the interwebs. So that's something that you need to care about. If you want to know more, we have this link at the bottom talking more about the research that Google applied in several companies to get these informations and get those numbers. So that's quite a good and useful research if you want to look for performance and really track performance and user conversion. Also, speed feedback. Those numbers, just a quick overall, a disclaimer, those numbers are not related to technology, actually, those ones. They are related to user speed performance. Those performance numbers are related to total user-centric numbers. First of all, if you have a look, and it is happening, so when the user goes to a page and see the navigation they can use really your navigation or not, or is that useful in the order of the content? Is something that I really want to see? It's usable. So can I go to website and click and use and go to the page, navigate between pages and check information for example, a description on a cell phone that I want to buy or things like that. And is it delightful? So is that a good experience that I'm providing for the users, for the customers, or maybe not that much? So how can you get that? So if you want to know more, again, at the bottom, we have a research talking about the user-centric performance metrics. And the long story short, that's the way that user will see. And that's how we connect the information, the user-centric measurement with the technology measurement. So it is happening, are connected to the first paint and the first contentful paint numbers. It is useful. It's connected to the first meaningful paint. So the first thing that the user will really get from your website. And it's usable. It's time to interact, really. So it's useful is the time that I can really use your web page, because sometimes you can see that image from your gallery, but I cannot click because if I click, the gallery won't be open. It needs to wait for a few seconds. Also, Talking about performance, we know that we have a cost to download the files from the internet, right? So if you have a website with a lot of image, for example, everything has a cost. And talking about cost, we can change cost for budget. Budget is a property that we can define how big, how massive, how large are your files and how long it takes to download. But for example, we have those numbers. Time to interactive in a slow 3G should be less than 2 seconds. Otherwise, the user will feel that something is going on and something's getting slower. First contentful paint should be less than 2 seconds. Lighthouse performance score for who doesn't know, Lighthouse is a tool, a really great tool that Google provided a few years ago, and now it's in the Chrome DevTools. It's already included in the Chrome DevTools, so you can just go open the Chrome DevTools and check for Audition, and you can run Lighthouse Audition in your website straight away. For those numbers, for Lighthouse Audition, not only performance, but all the rest should be more than 80. Up to 100, but it is more than 80. It's already a massive number. That means that your website is already up and running properly. And the size of JavaScript should be less than 107K, right? Just a thing. What if my JavaScript is more than this? There are a few techniques that we'll be sharing during this talk. And also talking about 2 seconds, those two big companies, they got their times to interactive between 100 seconds and Amazon between 1.4 seconds. So it's totally possible to get fast and get performatic on the web. Also, if you want to know more about few cases, we have this website, wostats.com. It has some cases for different companies sharing some approaches, some techniques, and some architectural patterns that are used across their pages. Again, the files are something hard for the browser, right? So specifically JavaScript, because you have the time to load and the time to render or interpret that. So there's a time to download, there's a time to compile, and there's a time to render. And here's one of the pages on the page that I've been working previously, and it shows that the component page, the page is a component because now we're talking about web, and web is totally connected with components because you can reuse, you can compose your page using small components. So think that there is a really interesting component to your page, right? And it takes between get ready to be rendered and really get in the page, it takes 2 seconds. We are talking that during those 2 seconds, the user will see this on the page. Your page will be blank. And for us, we know that it will take 2 seconds and we can wait. But for the user, it will be something like this. They will be thinking that something's going on, that something will be broken, or probably your website is not running properly. What's going on? And yeah, I like to start the discussion about 5G, because every time that we talk about performance, we'll be talking about, hey, we'll probably be can use something to improve that. Not only our code, not only our infrastructure, but we can use HTTP2, we can use parallelism, or we can use 5G, since 5G will be blazing fast, right? So what can we do about it? Let's take a look on how 5G, what's the current state of 5G around the world. Okay, first things first, how faster is that? As an example, to download something on 4G, the comparison between 4G and 5G is that 5G is usually 10 times faster than 4G. What that exactly means? That means that you can do a lot of crazy things when you use 5G. Those are the examples how that thing is running in US. Excuse me. Those are the numbers, and as you can see, that is a massive difference between the 5G and 4G. The link at the bottom shows the difference between 5G and 4G with providers and cities across the United States. Also, to get back and share, moving now to the technical way to explain things and start to talk right in a proper analogy for everyone, not only people who work in tech, but people who are not working in tech as well. If you wanted to download, if you love to watch, for example, Game of Thrones or any other series, let's say, or even a movie. Let's keep in Game of Thrones. But for example, if you wanted to download one episode in 4K, it would take 90 seconds to download one episode in 4K. Or even if you wanted to download the entire season, it would take 15 minutes in 5G. That's amazing, right? However, that's not how it works. That's not how it works around the world. And if you have any ideas how that thing is working, how the internet distribution is working around the world, that's the time to place your bet. So 3, 2, 1, you ready? Let's go. So yeah, that's the distribution that we have around the world for the internet. Uh, when it's darker, that means that you have a really good internet provision, and when it's lighter, that means that you don't have that much. As you can see, despite this region here, or for example, if you go to South America, you probably have less than 30% of the internet distribution here. So it's not that much. So as you can see, 5G won't be a solution in years. And you need to think of that. Giving another example, and in that time, at that time, sharing the case that we have in Australia, if you look for internet speed for mobile and other devices, we are in number 4, which is a massive improvement. We in this year we increased 4. We moved from the rank 8 to rank 4, which is really good. However, for laptops and desktops, we are now in 64. So we moved from 56 to 64. So yeah, that's something. To avoid that, Google is trying to work on it. And one of the ideas is if your page is really slow, the Google and Chrome will share that to the users, sharing that loading usually loads slow. So your page will be notified and you have your rank on the search decreased because of that. So performance is not only a kind of taste. Performance is really related to SEO, and it's really related to how your page will be performed as an overall. Right, now we have the moment, we know about the internet, we know about the performance, the overall, and how we can measure that. Let's think on a real picture internet around the world. First things first, step number 1, we need to define baselines. We need to start from something. And you can start from page loads as an example. You can have a measurement for, okay, if my pages take more than 3 seconds, that means that's a failure. If my page is taking less than 3 seconds, that means a success. And if you can get notified if something's going really, really slow, you can have something on your DNS or something like that, or maybe your CDN is out, you're facing some issues on it, you can solve that. But yeah, that's one way. A way that we used at Atlassian at the time was using a number called AppDex. That's a number based on the user satisfaction for the page to be rendered. The math is this, but let's avoid to explain those numbers and let's go to the real example. For example, you have the satisfied count of users, which is 170 for that time, and we have the tolerating count, which is 20, divided for 2, and the total samples was 200. If you have those numbers, you get the AppDex of 90. This is a number with a range between 0 and 100. So 90 is a quite good number, right? That wasn't our case. In our case, we got 60. And 60 was really bad. And when I mean really bad, I mean this. For the users, they usually see the O's in that page when they are accessing the page using Chrome. That's not good at all. And for us, we are looking at and okay, you live only once, and that was the feeling. No one wants that. Another metric that can be used is real user monitoring, right? So you can get all the information for the users and you can split between countries and regions. So for example, you can have the time for the browser and the response time for those regions and you can define, hey, maybe the users who are in UK or the Europe are getting a slower response for our CDN than the users who are in South America. Why this is happening? Maybe we need to change things in our proxy or something like that. So what can we do to improve those numbers? But you can work on those proactively because you have this measurement. That is one way. What else can do apart from those two? Of course, there's a lot of different approaches, but you can use, for example, you can set performance budget to avoid that to be happening. Sometimes it's not only DNS or not only the tree shake that you have the internet to get your file and send the file for the browser. Sometimes it's just because your file is too much, it's too big, and it doesn't need to be like that. One approach for this, you can load components, so load pieces of your code asynchronously, so that you have your main file, which has all the information that's required and that's critical for your page, and all the rest will be loaded asynchronously. So you can manage your critical path, and you can have optimistic preloading. This is a really good technique that can be used for example, galleries. When you have a gallery of image, you just load the first one, and you can load the previous one and the next one, just in case the user goes and tries to navigate in your gallery. That's quite handy. And for the page, it's quite cool because sometimes if your user doesn't open the gallery, the user doesn't need to load all the images. Keep that in mind. What if we miss something? We know about all these techniques, all those approaches, but even like that, we can miss something because we can always miss something. And more than this, what if which metric should it be the best for my app? Maybe just the path budget can be a good one. Maybe the performance load can be a good one. Maybe the web core virals can be a good one. But which one? How can I decide that? Okay, let me give you a real example. At Alaza, we were releasing a new navigation for users called Navigation Next. So we had a feature flag, which is a technique that you can turn on and turn off features, and say, hey, if this feature is turned on for that user, the page goes with the navigation next, which is the new navigation. Otherwise, keeps with the old navigation, the current navigation, and let's measure the difference between those users. So yeah, the code is if the feature flag is turned on, you have the new navigation. Otherwise, you keep the current one. Those files will be loaded asynchronously, so that won't be added in the main bundle. But how can you measure that? Because at the end, in your React component, our case is React, but that can be applied in any framework or library for the front end that we're using, right? So at the end, you can have something, hey, if you still don't have the navigation is loading because asynchronously, you render the skeleton so the user will understand that something's going on, that something's loading, and otherwise shows the navigation. Can be the old one or the new one. So how can you measure that? Maybe I can measure the logic that we have with the feature flags here or here to get, hey, that's the time that we are loading the old one, that's the time that I load the new one. Or maybe we can measure in the main component, which is the resolver for the components, right? Yeah, or maybe we can measure something else. What we can do, how we can do, what's the best approach? If you're not so sure, that's fine. Just try to avoid to measure technology. That's the core of all the problems that we can have in any application. If you're not so sure about which way to approach and which way to measure and instrument your code, try to measure in a top-down way. Why? Because a top-down way is focused on the user. And be honest, the user experience is the king and will always be the king. Yeah. And more about that, if you can have like a really deeper way to get information, you can use user time API. That can be really a good solution. Uh, you have marks and measures, how you can see. So they're all available in the object called performance. They're both available on Node.js Views backend or in the front end in any browser and any Blazing and Edge browser. So like performance.mark to create a mark to start, and when you finish the job, you create another mark, and at the end you call performance.measure to compare the mark that you created for start and the mark that you create to finish, right? And you have a console log with all the information. We have the duration and the time that started, the time that finished, uh, the time that was called in your page. Let's say if your page was loaded 3 seconds ago and you start this measure after 3 seconds, it shows that, and all other really good information. And we also have a performance timeline, so you can get all the entries because those entries are based in the way they're using. For marks, you get for the entry type mark. For measurements, you get by the entry type measure. And so on and so forth. You can also get the paint, the time that's paint that component is taken to be painted, or you can get for long tasks in the case that something is blocking or you have a memory leak in your page, or you can just pass a name that you want. For example, if you create a mark and the market login started, you just pass and then get that information, get that number. Few concerns about it because something's really cool until it doesn't. First, we need to measure the JavaScript execution. Sometimes we really need that because that's the core of all the things that we can do and the things that we can improve. Also, should be the implementation should be really simple, really straightforward, or at least as much as we can. And the user experience should have the speed metrics as we defined it previously, and also should have a developer experience really enjoyable. Shouldn't be something that's painful. How can you do that? Let's think in a case scenario, right? How can be a case scenario? Because everything is documented. You have in front end, you have in back end. So how come? Give a real example. If you go to Can I Use and check for performance, you can see that we have almost 90% of support in all the browsers. But if you go to the documentation in the end, you have the support, but you don't have support for all the methods. For example, in Opera, you don't have get entries or get entries by name, and that can be a problem. And when I say that can be a problem, say that something that can really go wrong and can be in production, right? So we still should have metrics for everything in your page. To avoid that, we need to create some standard. We can create some standard to how can you use this API between front and back end, because this API is quite different between those environments. And to avoid that, and all the concerns like the bundle should be really small because we are trying to avoid to increase our bundles. Should be a really proper solution. Should work in both environments. Should be isomorph application, right? To avoid that, I wrote a package called Perf-marks, and how that works. The way that works is quite simple. The flow is the same as we saw before. You have performance marks and call the function start, and you call the performance end and get the information, or you can call get entries by type and pass the type number. The result at the end will be the same as you have, but the difference is you can use that in front end, you can use that in back end, and you don't need to care between, maybe the back end I need to use performance observer, and the front end I need to check if I have that function available. All it does for us. And that's the way that you can use, that's a real example. You go to your page, you integrate, and when you load it, you go to performance, and the tab typing timings, you can see the mark that you created and the time that was consumed. You can also see the Chrome DevTools and you can get those values. That's quite neat. Right, demo time. We can really go to Perf-marks. And that's the website that we have for the Perf-marks, and it's using Stack Blitz. StackBlitz online editor, so you can have everything there. And when you go to inspect and move to performance, we need to click that and we have to load, right? But I won't do this right now. But as you can see, we have the duration here, we have those numbers, the start time. For this example, I'm just getting those two values, but you have all the values that is returning via performance, right? If you want to edit the example, you can go to that link and it will be opening in StackBlitz. So we have the profile, which is another function. We can wrap all your code and run it. And that's it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, nothing more to add. So that's the way that your library should be integrated. So a quick recap, things that we need to care and things that we were talking about during this talk. One, user perception really matters. It doesn't matter if your number is one, if it takes 1 second. If for the user, they think that it's taking 3 seconds, your page, even faster, is slow. To avoid that, always measure and try to measure the user experience. If you're not too sure what can you measure, define baselines. So if you want to improve something, you need to have the values that we have now, that we have right now. For example, if you want to improve performance because you have a bottleneck, you need to know how long it's take in that bottleneck first. Validate the impact of your techniques, maybe the way they're using can be improved, or maybe the way you use can be an issue. The last point is try to use standard, try to standardize everything because it will always help. Yeah. Next steps for us. Again, those were techniques that we're using at Atlassian, and now we are measuring not only the performance aspect, but also the user conversion and the user experience. For example, how long it's taking to see a file when it opens in Jira, or even a gallery when it goes to Confluence. But can be even more, right? Now that we know about our performance, we have performance prioritization. That means that any performance degradation that we have in our deployments, and we have deploy a lot of deployments every single day, since we use continuous deployment and continuous delivery, depending on the team. So we have those values. If something goes wrong, we need to check, because also performance degradation, it's a production issue for us. Or more than this, now we use a technique that instead of think in performance only in the code, we can think in performance as design, as a whole project. Let's see. For the new navigation, which this one that I'm showing you folks, you can use different techniques to avoid the user to click a lot. So more the user experience, more the developer experience is a proper way to access information on your site, right? So you have things faster by design, not only design the style of your page, but architectural design as well. Yeah. My last question is, are you guys ready to get your pages blazing fast? Of course, right? So yeah, if you want to know more, those are the links of the packages that I shared during this presentation, or you can go to web.dev and check the page for performance, web.dev/fast, and enjoy. Yeah, that's it. That was my presentation. I hope you guys like a lot, because for me it was a great experience. And thanks you all. See ya. So